Thank you for the click. My name is Luxeley. The question of the day, who is your favorite superhero? Mine is the Havoc Demon Hunter. Today we're going to go over the Demon Hunter first impression review video, and I'm going to break things down and grade them on each of the following 6 categories: single target damage, AOE damage, crowd control, survivability, mobility, and the last but not least, utility. Now, utility isn't about single target damage or AOE damage. It's about what is it that you bring to the table, what is it that you bring to a particular group that most other classes don't bring. What is it that makes a particular group, whether it's a M+ group or an RPG, say, we have to get ourselves a Havoc Demon Hunter. As I'm evaluating each particular category, I'm heavily weighing in on 2 factors. One, how does the Havoc Demon Hunter compare with itself in Legion? So for example, single target damage. Is it better in Legion? Is it better now in the BFA beta? Is it about the same? Is it a lot worse? Is it more fun? Is the rotation more smooth? And the second heavily weighed in factor is how do Havoc Demon Hunters compare to other melee DPS? Because the reality is, if you're not doing what's expected in a group, the group or the herd are going to find someone who can perform. That's the way of the world. That's the way of World of Warcraft. Unless, of course, you're with your friends or you're in a guild, but if you're pugging it, you gotta be sure that you're performing. The way I'm evaluating, 1 through 5. Very simple, like I'd grade a movie. 1 meaning, we need a buff. Somewhere along the line, maybe during the beta, maybe during the pre-patch, maybe during a launch, a couple of weeks into the game, we're going to get a buff. We could be in line for a buff. And 5 meaning that we're very overpowered. Somewhere along the line, we could expect a nerf. Keep in mind, especially on the PvP side of the game, Demon Hunters were extraordinarily strong. They came to the table with incredible mobility, huge burst damage, and pretty decent survivability. Better than most other melee. So my grading might be a little bit optimistic in this case because in a lot of ways, you can expect things to be tweaked quite a bit. Single target damage. Returning baseline single target damage abilities include Demon's Bite, Blade Dance, and Chaos Strike. Throw Glaives and Vengeful Retreat also make an encore in BFA. Copy and paste from Legion. Your Mastery, Demonic Presence, increases chaos damage by X and your movement speed by Y. Of course, X and Y scale as your Mastery scales. 4 baseline abilities deal chaos damage: Chaos Strike, I-Beam, Chaos Nova, and Fell Rush. Moving over to the talent tree, 2 talents deal chaos damage: Fell Eruption and Fell Barrage. Both talents reside on different tiers, which means you could choose both of them. Incidentally, both of the aforementioned talents return from Legion. New talents affecting single target damage include Insatiable Hunger, Demon's Bite generates up to 10 additional fury, pretty straightforward there. Dark Slash, slash an enemy for physical damage and increase the damage of Chaos Strike for 8 seconds. So in other words, you might be able to get in at least 2, maybe 3 or 4 Chaos Strikes with that buff. Cycle of Hatred, when Chaos Strike refunds fury, the remaining cooldown of Metamorphosis is reduced by 3 seconds, pretty cool. Trail of Ruin, the last Chaos Blade slash inflicts 4 seconds of a chaos damage dot. In case you're wondering, yes, Trail of Ruin will inflict chaos damage dots on multiple targets. Keep in mind, talents affected by chaos damage, make a note of this, grab a pen. Talents affected by chaos damage should be revisited as your mastery increases throughout the X-Pack. Let's move over to the other side of the ledger and talk about deleted talents. Prepared reduces Vengeful Retreats cooldown by 10 seconds, and you also generate 100 fury over 10 seconds. Gone. Bloodlet. Really good ability to get rogues out of stealth. You add a bleed to the glaive toss that you'd hit him with, so it gives him a dot, makes it a bit difficult for rogues just to vanish. Well, it's a little bit of a big deal now because, yes, you can still snuff out rogues, but also they can counter you and immediately vanish. Your baseline buff, Metamorphosis, returns. The cooldown is 4 minutes rather than 3.75 minutes. Of course, other factors can lower that cooldown. Kind of a non-event, but I want to be thorough, so there you go. There's a more significant change with your buffs in the talents. During Legion, you could take both Chaos Blades and Nemesis for a moderate 55% damage increase. Nemesis returns copy and paste into BFA. However, Chaos Blades 30% damage increase for 18 seconds, and your auto attack deals chaos damage, which of course is affected by your mastery. Losing Chaos Blades is pretty huge. It's the greater damage increase and turns auto attacks into chaos damage, but let's be real here. Stacking these two buffs for 55% damage for a window of thanks for playing? No. Something needed to be done about Demon Hunter damage. Popping those two, entering Metamorphosis even, makes a Nuclear Blast look like a firecracker. Speaking of Metamorphosis, the talent Demon Reborn. When you enter meta, the cooldown on I-Beam and Chaos Nova, well, that talent is now gone in BFA as well. I should mention that the PvP talent Rain from Above returns in BFA, does a lot of damage, and it's kind of fun, and it has a bit of utility to it. Granted, a lot of Demon Hunters do not take Rain from Above, and I understand why, but the damage is still very good, and it does offer utility. With regard to single target damage compared to other DPS specs, Havoc is still top tier. However, you lost 2 stacking buffs for a 55% increase in damage. How could you not take yourself down a couple of pegs from Legion? Surprisingly, like I said, I'm going to be optimistic when I grade each category just because it's kind of expected. Havoc is going to get some nerfs. Havoc, 4 for single target damage. AOE damage. Your artifact on use ability, Fury of the Illidari, deals chaos damage to all nearby enemies for 3 seconds. Well, we're going to stop talking about it because it's gone. It's one of the few artifact abilities that hasn't been placed either baseline or in the talent tree. And since the ability did chaos damage, the loss is pretty big, and it did quite a bit of damage as well. Keep in mind, in PvP, chaos damage is significantly better than physical damage versus plate. A new AOE talent could help fill the gap, however. Maybe just a little bit it will. Immolation Aura, not exactly new. I believe Vengeance had this ability. Still has it, by the way. Engulf yourself in flames, causing fire damage to all enemies within 8 yards. Radiating fire damage every second and generating 80 fury over the duration. Last 10 seconds, 25-second cooldown. The talent Fell Barrage returns in BFA. Unleash a torrent of chaos damage to all enemies within 8 yards. Last 3 seconds, 1 minute cooldown. There is a small change, however, with reference to Fell Barrage. In Legion, it lasted 2 seconds. In BFA, 3 seconds. In Legion, most damage abilities reduce the cooldown of Fell Barrage, but the same perk does not carry forward into BFA. I-Beam is your baseline AoE, and 2 talents on separate tiers can buff up I-Beam: Blind Fury and Demonic. Blind Fury. I-Beam generates 40 Fury every second, and the duration of I-Beam is increased by 50%. That's a lot of Fury. I can't even do the math. I need a calculator. Demonic. I-Beam enters you into meta for 8 seconds after you deal all of I-Beam's damage. The artifact trait Feast on the Souls is gone. Feast on the Souls lowered the CD of both I-Beam and Chaos Nova each time you consumed a soul fragment. I should mention Blade Dance and to a lesser extent Chaos Nova as AoE as well. Talents affecting Blade Dance include Trail of Ruin and First Blood. The latter is more of a single target ability though. The significant change here is losing a little extra cleave damage with Chaos Strike. This is the result of the absence of the talent Chaos Cleave and the artifact trait Chaotic Onslaught. Chaos Cleave hits all targets for 10% damage, and Chaotic Onslaught gave Chaos Strike a 10% chance to slash an additional target. To be honest, on the surface it doesn't look like a lot, but if you consider how much you use Chaos Strike and how much more you're going to be using Chaos Strike now that your artifact ability is gone, the loss is going to be felt. Given some of the changes, you're pretty forced to choose Immolation Aura to be competitive with your AoE here. Nerfing short-term buffs and AoE has been an ongoing trend throughout the BFA beta for all classes across the board, and with that in mind, I give Demon Hunters a 3.5 as far as AoE damage is concerned. Crowd control. This is where Demon Hunters have been a bit weak in Legion, and they're going to be weaker in BFA. Imprison went from a 15-second cooldown, get this, from a 15-second cooldown to a 45-second cooldown, a change I do believe is eventually, could be during the beta, could be during the pre-patch, could be a few weeks into BFA, but the reality is I think it's going to be reversed. Your other baseline CC, Chaos Nova, was changed from an AoE stun to a disorient and then back to a stun. Gotta love it when Blizzard does this. Really indicates to me they have no clue what they're doing. Chaos Nova can be modified by the talent Unleash Power, removes the Fury cost, and reduces the cooldown by 33%. Imprison can be modified by the PvP talent Detainment. Detainment essentially turns Imprison into a Cyclone. It increases the duration in PvP by 2 seconds and can't be broken by damage. Pretty cool. But, and this is a big but, like a fat bottom girl Freddie Mercury and Queen size butt. The cooldown of Detainment is raised to a ridiculous 90 seconds. Thank you, Blizzard. Consume Magic, your baseline interrupt is gone, but don't worry, it returns in BFA with a new name, Disrupt. I really want to charge Blizzard $10 for the name change. As far as interrupts go, Havoc's interrupt is slightly worse than it was in Legion, but still better than most other melee specs. The range has been cut in half, from 20 yards to 10 yards. That's the bad news. And a successful interrupt generates 30 Fury in BFA instead of 50 Fury. Nerf, nerf, nerf! As far as talents go, 2 talents add CC to your Bat Utility Belt, and unfortunately, they're on the same tier. Tier 108. Master of Glaives and Fell Eruption. Master of Glaives adds a 50% snare to your Glaives, and Fell Eruption is a 4-second stun, 30-second cooldown, very, very good ability. But one thing I've noticed about Fell Eruption is it doesn't do as much damage as it did in Legion. What a shock. So it has been nerfed quite a bit. In PvE endeavors, I think you're obviously going to be okay with less CC. It doesn't necessarily matter. Even at Mythic Plus, every Mythic Plus is going to have their hardcore CC dude, whether it's a rogue or a mage. So that's not necessarily the role that people are going to assume Demon Hunters are going to take. On the other side of the coin, PvP, I just can't believe I'm saying this, but Demon Hunters desperately need another CC choice in the PvP talents. It's not something I'd like to see. It's something that I think they're just going to have to see because these changes are pretty bad. From a PvE perspective, I give Havoc CC a 2.5. From a PvP perspective, I give Havoc a 1.5. The CC is worse than it was in Legion, and it's definitely worse than the majority of other classes. Solid 1.5 here for PvP, 2.5 for PvE. Survivability. How can I describe what Blizzard did to Demon Hunter survivability? Well, 2 words come to mind, hacked and slashed. But I'll give you a picture. Picture this. Blizzard essentially took Demon Hunter's survivability out to the woodshed and beat it with a nerf bat for about 20 years. Yes, they nerf things quite a bit on the PvP side of the game, not so much on the PvE side of the game, but it's not going to keep you in the fight as often as it did in Legion. The PvP talent Awaken the Demon Within. When you drop below 50% health, you gain meta for 6 seconds and a duration resets while at or below 20% health. 1 minute cooldown, it is gone. While I understand Demon Hunters didn't take this talent very often, keep in mind there's other aspects to PvP other than Arena. There's BG, skirmishes, and War Mode very well might be a very big thing going forward, as well as World PvP. This would have been a great talent for World PvP. The artifact trait, Illidari Knowledge, is gone. Illidari Knowledge reduced magic damage by 16%, or in some cases more, depending on your relics, how many you had slotted for this. However, in BFA, they compensated Demon Hunters with a new baseline ability called Demonic Words. Your tattoos reduce magic damage by 10%. If you don't have any tattoos on your Demon Hunter, I strongly suggest you get them because you'll be SOL without tattoos. I'm just kidding anyway. The baseline passive ability Shattered Dolls. Killing an enemy sometimes creates a soul fragment healing you. Legion, 25% max health heal. BFA, 20% health max heal. Here's the deal, 5%, not worth mentioning. It's a nerf, but it's really not worth mentioning, but I want to be thorough. And now for the really bad news, and I hope you're sitting down. While I do understand quite a few Demon Hunters might not have taken this particular talent, there are a few who have, and it definitely adds to your survivability if that's what you want to start to stack. The talent Soul Rendering takes a massive hit in BFA, and Legion Soul Rendering gave you a 70% leech in meta when you hit meta. In BFA, you gain 40% additional leech. Now, I understand how things work here. I know quite a few Demon Hunters say, or they've told me in some of my Demon Hunter videos, I don't take that talent. Luxeley, why are you taking that talent? Well, if there's a reason Blizzard's nerfing this. I think a lot of people have taken this talent. Otherwise, Blizzard would nerf it. And the fact is, this very well could take you out of the fight quite often in PvE. Because this is the kind of thing that you could use and maintain pressure. And obviously maintain a lot of pressure because you're going to be in meta. So it's not huge, but it does hurt a little bit. Your 2 baseline defenses, Blur and Darkness, return in BFA as well. The talents Glimpse and Cover of Darkness also make both those abilities, respective abilities, stronger. That's really nothing new though, and the talent Desperate Instincts returns, copy and paste from Legion, as does Netherwalk. Overall, your survivability's been gimped from Legion, but you're still pretty competitive versus other classes, and your ability to stay in the fight will not hurt as much in PvE as it will in PvP. I give Demon Hunter survivability a 3.5. Mobility. This is where Demon Hunters shine, and why not? I guess you'd expect anything with wings to shine in the mobility category, unless you're a paladin, a red paladin. Your baseline speed boost, Fel Rush, closes the gap and deals damage on a 10-second cooldown with 2 charges. See where I'm going with this? That is only second to maybe Windwalker Monks when it comes to gap closers. The talent Fel Mastery receives a buff in BFA. In Legion, you did 30% increased damage and gained 30 Fury. In BFA, you receive 100% increased damage, but the Fury generator is gone, and that's okay because you have many other ways of generating Fury. Overall, I think the change is an improvement, so Demon Hunter's doing a little bit better here. Part of your mastery also increases your movement speed, and the talent Fellblade gives you a charge much like a charge that a warrior would have, but it also deals damage, and it's on a 13-second cooldown. Keep in mind, Demon's Bite still offers the proc to reset Fellblade, so even though it's on a 13-second cooldown, there's a good possibility that you're going to be using it twice within those 13 seconds. Also, the talent Momentum returns in BFA, increasing your damage by 15% for 6 seconds and lowering the cooldown on Vengeful Retreat. Obviously, Momentum is affecting Fel Rush. Of course, we can put Vengeful Retreat in the mobility category as well. It's kind of like a Disengage that does damage, but you're not really closing gaps, you're retreating. Can't forget Double Jump, helping you boldly go where no man has gone before. You lost one key ability from the artifact with regard to mobility, Demon Speed. Blur grants 30% movement speed, and if you used the talent Desperate Instincts, where Blur automatically activates when you drop below 35% health, you're going to end up losing a bit more. Demon Hunter mobility here remains intact and largely uncompromised, to give their mobility a solid 4.5. Utility. This is where the uptick with Demon Hunters hits, and hits hard. Good news here. Blizzard noticed the need for utility, took away a little bit of survivability and damage, and filled the missing gap with a few new baseline abilities that are going to give Demon Hunters a little bit of value to any given group. Initially given to Death Knights, the new ability Consume Magic finds a home now with Havoc Demon Hunters. Consume Magic is essentially an offensive dispel, and if you remove the beneficial magic effect on an enemy target, you gain 20 Fury, 30-yard range, 10-second cooldown. Huge addition to the Demon Hunter Bat utility belt. Absolutely huge. Adds a lot of value to any given group, having that 30-yard dispel every 10 seconds. Torment, which was essentially a vengeance ability, it's a taunt. It's a minor addition here. Probably the benefits will be realized on the PvP side of the game, taunting Hunter and Warlock pets and even Elemental Shaman, or strike that, reverse it. There's a new passive baseline ability called Chaos Brand. Chaos damage brands the target, increasing magic damage by 5%. Huge against single targets, even huger in AOE situations. That will make Demon Hunters a lot more attractive in Arena, and more DPS casters will start wanting to pair with them, obviously, and you could have that trickle forward into Mythic Plus and certainly into rating. It's a huge, huge addition to the Demon Hunter Bat utility belt. And of course, Spectral Sight is great for snuffing out various stealth classes. That makes a return in BFA. On the PvP side, the talent Reverse Magic returns in BFA, copy and paste, exactly the same. A great ability for removing dots and roots, so good to see that back. The big gift here, no matter how you look at this, the big, huge news is the offensive Dispel Consume Magic, especially on a 10-second cooldown with a 30-yard range. There does appear to be a little bit of a cost here. The added utility means less damage, less survivability. That's the trade-off. And to be honest, I'm not sure if the trade-off is 100% worth it yet. Here's why. I haven't tested it out in many different situations or circumstances. Just difficult getting into BGs, difficult getting into arena, waiting around. And the bottom line here, I'll break it down like this. If you consistently roll with a group of friends or guildies, I'd say yes, it's worth the trade-off, because players that know you are going to notice a lot of the intangibles, a lot of the things that a lot of other players generally don't notice, such as the intrinsic things like dispelling. If you often roll solo, I'd say no. Because when you roll solo, you're there for the damage. Yes, they might take you because you have this dispel, but they're not going to be looking at the numbers saying, how many dispels did you get? No, they're not doing that, especially on a Demon Hunter. Most of them might not even realize that Demon Hunters now have a dispel. At least the first few weeks they might. So when you roll solo, it's all about the damage. More often than not, I would think that you're going to prefer to have that extra survivability over the extra utility. But the reality is, this is a pretty good move, I think. Utility is noticeably improved from Legion. I'd give it a solid 4. Did I just say a 4? Wow. Boy, they definitely did improve Demon Hunter utility, but at the cost of survivability and damage. I can't believe I'm about to say this, but I do think that Demon Hunters need a little bit of a damage buff. Did I just say that? This is Luxeley saying, whatever it is by you, whether it's morning, afternoon, or night, make it epic.